Have you ever wondered how someone who spent decades making millions of people smile could be carrying so much pain behind the scenes? For over 30 years, Julia Roberts became one of the most recognizable faces in the world. Her radiant smile, unforgettable performances, and warm personality earned her the nickname America's Sweetheart. Audiences saw confidence, success, and glamour. What they rarely saw were the personal losses, emotional challenges, and difficult family moments that shaped the woman behind that famous smile. At 58, Julia Roberts' story isn't defined by awards or blockbuster films alone. It's also a story of resilience, heartbreak, and learning how to continue moving forward despite life's deepest wounds. Her journey reminds us that fame may change someone's career, but it cannot shield anyone from grief. Julia Fiona Roberts was born on October 28, 1967, in Smyrna, Georgia. She entered a family that already loved performing arts. Her parents, Walter Grady Roberts and Betty Lou Demas, both had backgrounds in acting and theater education. They operated an acting workshop where creativity was encouraged, and storytelling became a normal part of everyday life. Although Julia would eventually become one of Hollywood's greatest stars, her early childhood was far from perfect. When she was still very young, her parents divorced. Like many children whose families separate, Julia experienced dramatic changes during the years that followed. Her mother later remarried, creating a blended family that wasn't always easy to navigate. Even before Julia reached her teenage years, tragedy struck in a way that would permanently affect her life. Her father, Walter, was diagnosed with throat cancer. In 1977, when Julia was only 10 years old, he passed away at the age of 43. Losing a parent during childhood leaves questions that often remain unanswered for decades. Friends can offer comfort, relatives can provide support, but nothing truly replaces the security a child feels from having both parents present. Julia has rarely spoken publicly in great detail about the emotional impact of losing her father, but throughout her career she has acknowledged the importance of family and the lessons she learned from both of her parents. Perhaps one reason audiences connected with Julia Roberts so naturally was because her performances carried genuine emotion. She understood vulnerability long before Hollywood ever called her name. During the 1980s, Julia moved toward acting professionally. Like thousands of aspiring performers, she faced auditions, rejection, uncertainty, and financial struggles. Success certainly didn't happen overnight. Small television appearances and supporting roles gradually helped her gain experience before she landed attention-grabbing performances in films like Mystic Pizza and Steel Magnolias. Critics immediately noticed something different about her. It wasn't simply her beauty. It wasn't only her smile. There was an authenticity in her performances that audiences believed. When Julia laughed on screen, viewers laughed with her. When she cried, audiences felt those emotions too. That rare ability soon transformed her career forever. Everything changed in 1990 with the release of Pretty Woman. The romantic comedy became an international phenomenon, earning hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide and turning Julia Roberts into one of the biggest movie stars on earth almost overnight. Suddenly, every magazine wanted her on its cover. Every studio wanted her in its next blockbuster. Every interview focused on her personal life as much as her acting. Success at that level comes with extraordinary rewards, but also creates extraordinary pressure. The public often assumes that becoming famous solves life's problems. In reality, fame usually replaces ordinary problems with much larger ones. Every relationship becomes news. Every mistake becomes a headline. Every difficult moment becomes public discussion. Julia experienced this reality very quickly. Throughout the early 1990s, enormous media attention followed nearly every aspect of her life. Tabloids analyzed her friendships, romances, career decisions, and even ordinary daily activities. Very few celebrities escaped that level of constant scrutiny during the era of supermarket tabloids, and Julia Roberts became one of their favorite subjects. Behind the cameras, however, she was still simply a young woman trying to understand adulthood while living under an unimaginable spotlight. One of the most painful chapters came during her relationship with actor Kiefer Sutherland. The couple became engaged, and their wedding attracted enormous media attention. Fans expected a Hollywood fairy tale. Instead, the relationship ended just days before the planned ceremony. The cancellation became front-page entertainment news around the world. For most people, the end of an engagement is heartbreaking enough. For Julia, it unfolded before millions of strangers. Reporters analyzed every rumor. Photographers waited outside. Television programs speculated endlessly. Few people truly understand how emotionally exhausting it must be to experience personal heartbreak, while cameras document every reaction. Yet despite the embarrassment and disappointment, Julia continued working. She kept filming. She kept promoting movies. She kept smiling. Looking back today, it's easy to recognize that many of those smiles were expressions of professionalism rather than proof that life was perfect. Sometimes strength doesn't look dramatic. Sometimes strength simply means showing up for work when your heart is hurting. For Julia Roberts, that became a recurring theme throughout her life. As Julia Roberts moved through the 1990s, her career reached heights that very few actors ever experience. And Runaway Bride confirmed that she wasn't just a one-time sensation. She had become a cultural phenomenon. Audiences trusted her. When Julia Roberts appeared on screen, people believed in the story. That trust became one of the most valuable things in Hollywood. But even as her professional life flourished, she began searching for something fame could not whom she had met while working on a film. Unlike many Hollywood relationships that play out publicly, theirs developed with remarkable privacy. Friends and colleagues often describe Danny as someone uninterested in celebrity culture, a quality that reportedly appealed deeply to Julia after years of intense public attention. Together, they built a family life that looked very different from the glamorous image often associated with movie stars. The couple welcomed twins Hazel Motor and Phineas Motor in 2004, followed by their son Henry Motor in 2007. For a woman who had spent much of her adult life being photographed everywhere she went, motherhood offered a different kind of fulfillment. She spoke often about wanting her children to have a normal upbringing, school events, family dinners, time away from Hollywood. Those ordinary moments became increasingly important to her. Professionally, Julia achieved another historic milestone when she starred in Erin Brockovich. Her performance earned widespread acclaim and won her the Academy Award for Best Actress. The victory represented more than a trophy. It proved that the actress known for romantic comedies could deliver powerful dramatic performances as well. By that point, Julia Roberts had become one of the highest-paid actresses in film history. Reportedly, from the outside, it seemed she had everything: a loving husband, healthy children, critical respect, financial security, global fame. Yet life has a way of reminding us that success and sorrow can exist at the same time. The family tragedy that changed everything. In February 2014, Julia Roberts faced one of the most devastating experiences of her life. Her half-sister, Nancy Motes, was found dead in Los Angeles at the age of 37. The death was later ruled a drug overdose. Nancy had struggled with personal difficulties for years, and the relationship between her and several family members had reportedly been complicated. What made the tragedy especially painful was the intense public attention that followed. Private grief suddenly became national news. Every family has conflicts. Every family has misunderstandings. Most families are allowed to experience those struggles in private. The Roberts family was not. Newspapers, television programs, and online commentators examined personal relationships that outsiders could never fully understand. Speculation spread quickly, often without complete information. For Julia, the loss itself was already unbearable. The public conversation surrounding it made the situation even harder. Shortly after Nancy's death, Julia gave an interview that had been scheduled before the tragedy occurred. Observers noted how emotional she appeared while trying to describe what the family was experiencing. It is just heartbreak. Those simple words captured truth that fame could not soften. When someone dies, awards do not help. Money does not help. Fame does not help. You are simply left with grief. A second loss before the family could heal. As if the family had not already endured enough, another tragedy soon followed. Julia's mother, Betty Lou Berdemus, had been diagnosed with lung cancer. During her illness, she lived with Julia, Danny, and the children, allowing the family to care for her closely. Those months were reportedly filled with both love and sadness. Grandchildren spending time with their grandmother, a daughter watching a parent grow weaker, a family trying to create comfort during an impossible situation. On February 19th, 2015, Betty Lou Berdemus died at the age of 80. The timing was especially heartbreaking. Less than a year earlier, the family had lost Nancy. Now Julia was mourning her mother as well. She chose not to attend the Academy Awards that year, focusing instead on her family and her grief. Imagine carrying the loss of a sibling and a parent within such a short period. Imagine trying to remain present for your children while processing your own heartbreak. That was a reality Julia Roberts faced. Friends later describe how important family became during that period. Rather than retreating into celebrity life, Julia reportedly leaned even more heavily into the role that mattered most to daughter, mother, and sister. In later years, she occasionally shared small tributes to her mother, including photographs and personal messages that revealed how deeply that relationship continued to shape her. Grief does not disappear because time passes. Often, it simply changes form. The sharp pain becomes a quieter ache. A birthday, a holiday, a family photograph, a familiar phrase. These small moments can bring loved ones back into the room, even years after they are gone. For Julia Roberts, the woman millions recognize from movie screens was also a daughter who missed her mother and a sister who had experienced profound loss. That is the side of the story the public rarely sees. Not the red carpet, not the box office numbers, not the famous smile. Just a human being learning how to live with absence. As the years passed, Julia Roberts gradually stepped away from the relentless pace that had once defined her career. She still accepted acting roles, but she became far more selective about the projects she chose. It was no longer about proving herself or chasing box office records. Instead, she seemed interested in meaningful stories, talented collaborators, and maintaining the balance she had worked so hard to create. For someone who spent decades at the center of Hollywood, that change was significant. There was a time when nearly every major studio wanted Julia Roberts attached to its next film. Her schedule was packed, interviews were constant, and public appearances seemed endless. But priorities evolved. Motherhood became her greatest commitment. In interviews over the years, Julia has often described raising her children as the most rewarding role of her life. Unlike many celebrities who openly share every family milestone, she and Danny Moder made a conscious effort to keep their children away from excessive media attention. They wanted Hazel, Phineas, and Henry to grow up with as much normalcy as possible. That decision reflected something deeper. Julia had spent enough years living under intense public scrutiny to understand the value of privacy. She knew firsthand that fame could be exciting, but it could also become overwhelming. Every headline, every rumor, and every personal challenge could quickly become entertainment for strangers. Protecting her family became one of her highest priorities. Even professionally, she demonstrated that longevity in Hollywood requires adaptation. Rather than trying to recreate the romantic comedies that had made her famous, she explored more mature characters in films and television projects. Audiences watch not only an actress grow older, but an artist continue evolving. Very few performers remain relevant across 4 different decades. Julia Roberts managed to do exactly that. Part of the reason is simple. She never relied only on beauty. She relied on authenticity. Whether playing a determined legal assistant in Erin Brockovich, a conflicted woman in Closer, or later dramatic roles, she consistently brought emotional honesty to her performances. That quality cannot be manufactured. It comes from experience. And experience often comes through hardship. Looking back over Julia Roberts' life, it becomes clear that her greatest challenges never happen on a movie set. They happen at home. The loss of her father during childhood, the emotional complexities within her extended family, the heartbreaking death of her half-sister, the passing of her mother only a year later. These weren't dramatic movie scenes. They were real moments that change a real person's life forever. Many fans only recognize Julia Roberts as the woman with Hollywood's most famous smile. But smiles can be misleading. People often assume happiness is visible. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't. Many individuals become remarkably skilled at carrying pain quietly. They continue working. They continue caring for their families. They continue smiling for people around them. Not because life is easy, but because they choose not to let heartbreak define them. That may be one of the most remarkable things about Julia Roberts. Despite extraordinary success, she has never claimed to have a perfect life. Instead, she has often spoken about gratitude, about family, about appreciating ordinary moments, about finding joy in simple routines that have nothing to do with Hollywood. Those values seem especially meaningful when viewed alongside the losses she has endured. At 58, Julia Roberts represents something different than she did 30 years ago. She is no longer simply the rising star from Pretty Woman. She is no longer just America's sweetheart. She is a wife who has maintained a marriage for more than 2 decades in an industry where lasting relationships are often rare. She is a mother whose greatest pride appears to be her children rather than her awards. She is an Academy